Hi, welcome back to another episode of Breaking the Lens of Bias. My name is Kat Killian, and I'm glad to be here with you today. In light of something that happened yesterday, I decided at the last minute to change my topic. That is not why I'm a little bit late today. Something unexpected came up, and I am not sure why that happened. Um, and it seems that my green screen went down. Second time this has happened this week. Okay. Well, we're just gonna go with this. It is breaking the lens of bias. So in light of what happened this day, this earlier this week with the Alex Jones and Infowars versus the Sandy Hook survivors and or families of those who were killed in that horrific tragedy, um, I thought I would talk a little bit about, is free speech really free? And I think here the bias is that many people think that free speech uh, can be held by anyone, that you have the right to say whatever you want. And while that may be true, um, the First Amendment regarding free speech is actually very narrow in its scope. So I'm going to go ahead and read that for you. So the First Amendment reads as follows: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So, right here, Congress shall make no law. So, in other words, the government, in and of itself, the way I read this and the way I understand it, is the government cannot prevent me from having freedom of speech. They cannot make a law that abridges that speech. However, I do think there is an accountability that people need to be held to regarding free speech. So, for example, the classic kind of thing that's out there is you can't yell fire in a crowded theater if there's not a fire, because inevitably what will happen is people will rush to get out of the building, and people may get injured, or worse, trying to get out of the building in that rush. You can't say there's a bomb in the airport, things like that. So while free speech is there are certain limits to it in terms of accountability. The government can't stop you from doing that, but they can hold you accountable for your actions when you are expressing free speech, as I understand it. So that brings us to Alex Jones and his corporation and program Infowars. Um, so looking at this, is he kept saying that Sandy Hook was a hoax. It was a, what do I want to say? They were, they call them bad actors. It was being acted out basically, um, for the sole purpose of being able to gun control. Again, gun control is not an issue, but because of the way he took the speech and twisted it, to say these were bad actors and this was their purpose in doing that, is people who were very pro gun rights were believing that, and they were harassing these families and just causing them pain upon pain upon pain after the tragedy of losing their children or losing their spouse, in the case of the teachers, but losing loved ones. And I'm grateful that that's not something I've ever had to experience, but I would think that if I had lost a family member or someone close to me who in that kind of a tragedy, that it would be very painful to tell people that it was a lie. And then to have people harass me and say that it would be that I was doing this for some nefarious purpose, or even possibly a worthwhile cause, but basically that I was lying in order to advance an agenda, when it's not the case, is very would be very problematic and very painful, and a lot of emotional damage. And then there was also physical threats, people getting called. So the jury, he was found liable, and the jury awarded, I believe it was $965 million to these 8 families. And this was already on top of another verdict for, I think it was 54 million for one plaintiff, as I understand. And if my facts are slightly off, please correct me in the chat. So saying all this is this to say, if you're going to have the question for today is, free speech really free? And see, here's a kind of a the idea that you can say whatever you want is a great example of belief bias. So I believe this, and I can say anything I want, and I'm getting away with it, even though it's hurtful. You'll rationalize anything that supports it. Well, the government says we can have free speech. Not say we can have free speech without consequences. We cannot limit free speech. So now it looks like I'm having a connection issue, but it looks like it's been restored. So great, connection issue restored. All right. So that all being said, is free speech free? The answer to that is no. Irresponsible, or I should say, responsible free speech is free if it's based in fact, not just belief. If you have things that can back you up, and if you are not using that speech to incite violence or harm to others, you're stating that this is what it is, then I would say you're safe. But when you are using free speech, or speech in the guise of under freedom of speech, to say, well, I can say whatever I want because I believe it, and then realizing the harm that it causes there. Now, the Alex Jones situation has another layer of it. He admitted in open court that he knew what he was saying wasn't true, but he was doing that to build his base, to uh, cater to the conspiracy theorists surrounding these things, and just building on that to get viewership, to get listenership, to get money donations, to sell his merchandise on his website. Um, so he was using this known falsehood in order to profit off the hurt of other people. And again, as evidenced by the verdict, free speech is not always free. Um, so I would say that if you're listening to something and it doesn't sound quite right, and especially if somebody has another agenda as part of it, they're trying to get money from you, they're trying to get listenership or readership or views from you, and they have an agenda. Now everybody has an agenda, but when that agenda doesn't ring true, um, it might do you a good a good be a good practice to question that and look up those beliefs, and examine them. Just don't say, well, I feel that it's true, so it must be true, and I'm going to repeat it, and I'm going to harass people, and I'm going to go out and do whatever. Why, I would ask myself, if I heard that, and I had that kind of belief, I would ask myself, why would people act this out? how many people were involved in uh, this incident that were involved. Now, we've seen movies where these kinds of things happen. Um, but how many people are really involved? And if it's just one person stating this, and everybody from government officials and mayors and police departments and governors and even the president, whether or not you believe with his politics, would say anything, what do they have to gain? This is the question to ask yourself. What do they have to gain by perpetuating this ruse? Um, and then what does the person saying this information have to gain by that? Um, and so that's what I'm going to ask you to take away from this is, when, you know, free speech, is it harmful to other people? Is it libel? You're saying things that are patently false, and you know that they're false in order to gain some kind of outcome for yourself, be it a political outcome, an economic outcome, whatever. And what is the purpose of it? What is the truth behind it? And look into the facts. It's the whole thing that I'm trying to do in this show, is to ask you to look at the facts behind suppositions that are made, things that are said either in the news or by public figures or even in private figures, various policies that are being said, and to look and to ask yourself, what exactly is going on here, and investigate it yourself. Even if it may confirm what you believe, even if it sounds like it might be okay, or you heard something about that before, ask yourself, is it? Um, so hopefully, I mean, I think that lens of bias was broken by the verdict, but I felt very strongly about that, and to share that about, really, is free speech free? Because it's less about the verdict of Alex Jones and more about what free speech is and what it means. Does not mean that you can say anything that you want. So with that, thank you. Pardon the technical difficulties. Perhaps I will just have to read the stream and maybe redo this video over again. So today has been one of those days, and obviously by the technical gaffes. So anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I hope you tune in next week at noon for another episode of Breaking the Lens of Bias. Bye, everyone.